The topic is quite interesting for this panel, and we have some very illustrious leaders from our industry today, all from quite diversified areas of the ecosystem, I should say. And so we'll get to learn from them in terms of what's going on in the digital space, especially in terms to looking at how do we exploit more revenues and add on more customers within our ambit of digital banking. Because as we all know, we still have a long way to go in terms of financial inclusion. So I will start my first question with Turab, since you are looking after financial inclusion at UBL. One of the key, I think, gaps in the industry is the gender gap, of course, where the female, gender is not really onboarded as much as the males are. I think there's a huge gap there. So I was just wondering how UBL is looking at financial inclusion for women. Are there any particular use cases? Because, each person has their own need, and how are those needs being addressed? So are there any new use cases being developed to get that segment on board? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Najib Saab. So, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. I think it's a great question to start off with, because I think this is something that the industry I think the digital financial services industry, at least in Pakistan, was set up with the ambition of financial inclusion. And how much progress we've made in the last 10, 12 years is open for debate. I think the problem really starts when we say that we know what people at the bottom of the pyramid or that particular socioeconomic class that we're trying to address need. And I would like to flip that question, because a lot of us who are financially included have known banks pretty much all our lives, and we've known banking services. We apply that same thinking to the unbanked, and we assume that by reducing the size of the transaction or by slicing up the product a little bit, now we are putting forward a service which should have demand. And obviously it doesn't, because it's not contextualized. So one of the things that we want to work on is making that banking piece invisible, because if we lead as a bank and we go to our customers as a bank, well, there's a brilliant book by Kentaro which talks about, it's called Geek Mythology. And the premise of that book is that technology does not change customer behavior. It only accelerates existing behavior. So what we need to do is figure out what is the customer behavior that is present in that market that we want to address. I'll give you an example. When I was living in Nairobi, I had a maid who would come in thrice a week to clean up my apartment. And I'd figured out with her that the way I would pay her would be that every day that she comes, I would give her what her daily remuneration was. After a few weeks of this, she one day came to me and she said, do you mind if you don't pay me daily? And in fact, hold that salary back and pay me at the end of the month. And I was a little surprised with that, because I was paying her daily because I thought it would ease her income, smooth out her income. So I asked her, I said, are you expecting me to pay you more if I hold back your salary and pay you at the end of the month? And she said, no, I want the same amount. So then I was even more surprised, and I said, why do you want me to do it? And she explained. She said she had a daughter who she was putting through school. And if I paid her on a daily basis, she was afraid that she would end up spending that money that she was otherwise saving for her education. So she would pay the school fee with that money. And that was an epiphany for me, because I realized the way that people look at money is very different depending on context, and especially where you've got scarcity at play. The more scarce your resources are, the more of the tunnel visioning that starts happening around how you manage your expenses. So effectively, she was willing to pay me a fee. She wasn't charging me more to hold her money back. Has that sort of behavior been digitized? I don't think so. I mean, we know that people do mental accounting, but have we brought that into our design yet? I don't think so. So to answer the question, Najib bhai, what we are working on is trying to map the customer behavior in this segment, trying to understand what is that ecosystem that they're existing in, what are the drivers and motivators that drive their decisions on how they spend money, and then work backwards from there. And like Evans was saying, I really liked what he said. He talked about not trying to do all of this alone. The second biggest mistake we make, I think, is when we try to do this entire thing on our own and we end up failing because it's just so complicated an issue. You can't solve it with one magic product or one magic service. So we look for collaborations and partnerships. We know that there are niche players who are experts in their particular areas. We want to do handshakes with them. We want to empower them to serve these customers. We don't need to do it ourselves the last mile. But through these handshakes, we find the niche segments where there are already fintechs working, there are agri-techs working, there are insurtechs working, and we empower them with our banking services, our APIs, and we let them do what they're good at, and we do what we can for them. So it's not an easy problem to solve. It will require, I think, iterations. But the bottom line is get close to the customer, figure out their life journey, figure out what they need, and they will tell us. And then build backwards from there.
Najib, if you want, if I may interject, add to this. I think it was a great response from Tughral. Just based on my own experience, I can tell you the use cases that has worked for us in the past. BNPL being the primary use case, 40%, almost touching 14% of our customers are women. So, just giving them a wallet without any use case around it, is just doing it for the sake of doing it. We need to build use cases. I think it's difficult for women to get credit cards. It's easy for women to open their accounts, have debit cards associated with those accounts. We have built a use case where now these women are able to go on any website, use their debit card, and buy something that they want to buy on installments. And this becomes a segue into a credit cards play for the banks. Because banks, if traditionally, if you look at it from a traditional lens, banks will not be able to, or any financial institution will not be able to assess or evaluate their customer because there's no income, there's no history of banking relationships. So use cases like BNPL, I think is a good segue into opening up that population for more and better services from the banks and other financial institutions.
Right. And Tughral, you had mentioned about customer behavior, which leads me to the next panelist. Mohammad Yar Sahab, agar aap pehle apna ek brief introduction kar dein, and then we can go on to the question.
Thank you. I founded a company called OneLoad, which manages a retailer network, about 40,000 shops, micro retailers across the country. These shopkeepers function as financial agents as well as providers of payment services and top-up services for telecoms, as well as utility bills, etc. And we typically provide around 12 million or so walk-in customers and settlement transactions every month.
So basically we are talking about a very huge segment of our country, which is the micro or the small enterprises, which are your, the khokas and the small retail shops. I mean, and I think mostly it's all cash, in our country. So we have right now close to 7.6 trillion rupees currency in circulation, which is part of, I think they are part of that particular, economy. So one of the reasons which is normally cited is that, well, one of the problems or one of the road bumps for this segment is that they avoid paying tax. So that's the reason they don't want to get on board. How do you see that customer behavior changing, or how are you addressing that? So if you can give us some insight into that segment, please.
Sure. I think just to maybe give a little bit of context and profile of the micro retailer along with it. So we, our sales team is spread around 700 towns and cities across the country. And about 80% of the retailers that our sales team visits or our call center calls do not wish to be spoken to in Urdu, and certainly not at all in English. However, interestingly, they use our app, which is in English. And if you give them an Urdu app, they get confused. We tried it. It's icons and English numerals, numbers that actually work really well for them. So we've tried many UI user experience exercises, and they're sort of okay with what they have so far. At the same time, it's also very interesting that most of them, about half of them, actually accept inbound payments digitally from EasyPaisa and JazzCash from walk-in customers. So they are not averse to digitization. Each one of those transactions is being documented at one level or the other. They're not averse to that. When they function as financial agents, they're typically transacting on every weekday. They're transacting close to 100,000 rupees per retailer per day. And there is significant withholding taxes on some of the commissions they get. So if they ever paid or filed a tax return, they should technically be getting a reimbursement of the tax that's been withheld. So, and they're not averse to documentation of any kind. The SIM they use is biometrically verified. When they sign up as a agent, cash deposit agent for any of our partners such as EasyPaisa or JazzCash, they go through a full documentation exercise. We have never heard from them that that is a problem. What is a problem for them is when they are accepting a digital payment, very simply, if looking at their life, they need to get money on a daily basis. So if we tell them that you do a transaction today, you get, somebody pays you today and you'll get the money 3 days from then, and from 3 working days from now, and it will be at a 3% MDR, merchant discount rate, that transaction is not going to happen. So if you actually ask the consumer to pay for it, the consumer would be willing to pay for it, because consumers actually want, even in these sort of low-income neighborhoods where we operate, we actually see an insatiable demand for digitization. And there's an insatiable demand for cash collection. So we collect a few 100 million rupees of cash deposits for 2 telecom wallets every day. And we're not able to keep up with the demand. And every one of those transactions is documented and passing through the balance sheets of our partner banks. So, and it's taken us a while to figure that workflow and comply with the state bank guidelines and all that. So we've done all that. But I think it's, to us, it seems like a bit of a myth that people don't want to be documented because of taxation. We haven't seen that. What we do see is that people are very conscious of value erosion. So if they are officially, cooking oil is one of the, these are small convenience stores, they function as convenience stores, your neighborhood corner shops, etc. One of the most sold items is cooking oil, and that has an approximate margin of 2% distribution margin. So you tell that retailer that if you sell this cooking oil at a 3% merchant discount rate, he's not an idiot, he's not going to accept that transaction. Even if he marks up, and typically as convenience stores operate, the prices are higher than the same water bottle this water bottle that you get from a supermarket is going to cost you less than what you would get at a convenience store. But if it's a cash transaction, they can build and increase their margin. And that is how they do it. They charge for the convenience to the consumer. But if you say, digitize this transaction, if it's a 2% discount rate and you have a 2% distribution margin, it doesn't work. Now, how do we make it viable? Why is it that 20,000 or 22,000 active base of our retailers growing monthly is actually accepting digital payments as a preference to cash for buying eggs and bread and whatnot? Very simply, we do real-time settlement. We factor and we do real-time settlement. At the same time, so they get the money immediately, they're able to pay their suppliers immediately, and any money they get into the system in OneLoad, they actually make money from it. So if you can show them a good economic value, we do not see any problem to digitization, whether it's English language or smartphones. I'll pause here.
Oh, that's very interesting and insightful, especially because I think, like you just mentioned, especially when you're working in 700 cities, that tax is really not the big problem. It's what you had just commented upon. Now, this leads me to the next area, which is, like you mentioned, insatiable demand for credit, and loans. But unfortunately, that's fine for people who have some sort of a credit history, and there's a huge, number of citizens who do not have a credit history. So, which leads me to the next panelist, Mr. Naeem Zamindar. He needs no introduction, but I would still like him to, give a bit of introduction about Neem Exponential, and then we can take on the question.
Sure. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Great to see this room packed with, with energy. Neem is basic. We founded Neem about 3 years ago, and the team that founded it has a deep experience in telecoms, in fintech globally, right? Having invested in over 80 fintechs around the world, some of the leading names in the world. And we saw that the real opportunity in Pakistan, where we talk about financial inclusion, we thought we wanted to change the paradigm. We wanted to change the paradigm to financial wellness, right? We want to build a business that enables people's wellness. So we said, let's design the business around that. Second thing we decided was that it needs to be embedded, right? Because the use cases come when you are doing your business, when you're part of a value chain, when your lifestyle is being enabled a certain way, it needs further enablement through financial services. So we said, let's build it around embedded financial services. So the goal of what we're trying to achieve is the financial wellness of the underbanked, right? And that is a huge segment in Pakistan. And how do? We do it by plugging into different communities or value chains or digital channels to be able to capture the context of what they're doing, who they are. The insights that we get from there enable us to enable their financial wellness, right? So we have our own, is what's called the Neem account, which can plug into any digital ecosystem. We can easily plug it. It's an open API architecture. It's in UAT right now in 3 different communities. And once you plug in an account, you can issue debit cards, you can later on credit cards, and we'll plug in anything, like I said, it's context specific. Whether it needs an RDA account or a dollar account or a saving account, we can have plugins that allow you to enable that for any digital platform, right? So that's very powerful. And then once you're in that value chain, using the insights of that value chain, you are able to understand what the needs are. If it needs, for example, when you're working with farmers, in that value chain, we know a lot about the farmer. We know where his land records, right? Because we're working with a company called Baig Kisan, which has insight into the land records. It has satellite imagery of the thing. They've got a field force. Using all that data, you're able to then, and because this company is starting to recommend now the right fertilizer, the right seeds, and the right pesticide, to not only enable the payment of it, but to also then finance it as well, right? And then hopefully when he gets a bumper crop, he has a lot of surplus to have the saving products ready for him. So the whole life cycle can be enabled. It's the use case. That's what Hiraj said beautifully, right? When there is a use case, adoption starts happening. That's how we believe the massive adoption, right? From 21% to nearly everyone using it is going to happen when you are able to enable their uses, their lives in a meaningful way. And it's a very exciting time in Pakistan. I think, this is the one thing that's going to be, financial empowerment and education are the 2 driving forces for this country to move forward. So happy to be part of that.
Just leading on, because, our country is quite diversified in terms of languages, the culture, the traditions, and of course, all our digital apps or the, interaction is mostly in English, even though in some areas or some apps, I think it's more icon-based. And then also, I think almost 40 to 50% of the mobiles in this country are feature phones and not smartphones. So how do you address the language and that aspect as well when you are reaching out to a larger population, given the diversification?
So like we said, we're a B to B to C player, right? So we enable the other business. For example, in the case of Baig Khabar Kisan, they have 6 languages through which they communicate, right? So for them, it becomes very easy. We also partner with OneLoad, by the way, right? And OneLoad, through all the retail outlets, we use the insights of their value chain, of their customers, which they've done beautifully. I mean, this is a great example of collaboration, to be able to provide overnight credit, right? And then term loans as well, right? And in their community, they're okay with with English. That's fantastic. So we believe that that value chain or the other digital partner knows his customer better than we do, right? And we just enable them to do their job more effectively, to provide financial services, whether it's payment or whether it's lending, savings, or insurance, through those channels for those use cases, right? Specifically.
Okay, thank you. So talking of use cases, Yasser, you're running QisstPay. So why don't you just give a little, introduction about yourself for the people who may not know you, and then we can come to the question.
Yasser, I'm the CEO of QisstPay. Before joining QisstPay, I was with Deloitte in San Francisco for about 2.5 years. And before that, I was in the Middle East with Al Hayl and Mashriq. I'm a Mashriq alumni. I started my career with HSBC, project-based career as a management trainee. I was posted in Singapore, Middle East. So throughout my career, I've worked as a banker, but mostly my tasks were project-based. So I was, building, scaling businesses, and at a very early stage in my career, I started, kind of switching towards the digital side. So, we were talking before this panel, we were talking, on coffee. I was saying that I want to see the day when, banks would have a non-digital department rather than a digital department. This is what, the idea is going forward, because digital for us should be native. It shouldn't be a separate department to take care of digital. QisstPay, what QisstPay does is we start with in fact, one more thing I want to make a reference to, I was very happy to, hear the speeches from Mr. Naeem and Mr. Ishrat. I think Naeem hit the nail on its head in terms of identifying the use cases and the opportunities in Pakistan. So we came to Pakistan about 2 years back. We came with a BNPL only play. Despite the challenges that we're facing these days in Pakistan, we still feel that this is an excellent opportunity. All emerging markets have their challenges. You see Egypt, you see even Middle East have their own challenges, Egypt, Philippines. Every emerging market has their own challenges. We feel that this brings to the table a lot of opportunities. So during these difficult times, we're able to transform our business from a BNPL-only business into an embedded finance play. And we're building more and more use cases. We're trying to become an embedded fintech play for banks as well. So far, alhamdulillah, we're a profitable company. Recently, we turned profitable. Sustainability is not an issue. We're trying to, so one more thing I want to address also, we talk about unbanked and, digitalization and bringing these, individuals and companies into the foray of financial services. I feel that it has to be a top-down approach, not a bottoms-up approach. We've seen that happen in multiple countries. They've issued wallets like crazy. Everybody has a wallet, but there are no use cases built around those wallets. If you pick up any organization and see the wallets that they have and the inactive wallets that they have, this would be a huge percentage. So I feel that we need to be better at servicing the customers who are ready to be served, give them better access, easier access, make it less cumbersome for them, make it less pricey for them, and then this will trickle down to the masses. That's how QisstPay is building its business forward in Pakistan, Philippines, and hopefully very soon in US as well.
If I can just ask you, because we're talking about use cases a lot, and we've been talking about financial inclusion in our industry for the past 10, 15 years. And always use case is the question mark. यार use cases नहीं है, use cases नहीं है, तो क्यों नहीं है use cases? 15 साल तो हो गए सबको, you know, they've jumped into this, financial inclusion part. I mean, of course, partly it's through the social protection, BISP and SARS के through जो payments हो रही हैं. They're also trying to, get people on board. But वो तो चलो एक specific segment है. But what about, so why don't we have the right use cases? What is it that's missing? Are we not doing on-ground research? Are we just sitting in our offices and, having coffee and deciding कि यार use case क्या होना चाहिए? What do you think, in your opinion, is missing from this?
So, as I said, this will be my opinion. It's not qualified. And let's pick up from what Tughral said. I think Tughral is on the right track when it comes about, when it talks about getting customer feedback, starting from there. I think this is critical. In any country which is dominated by banks and few fintechs, everybody gets into a comfort zone, right? It took Dubai about more than a decade to come up with their own wallet. They started talking about this like in the early 2000s, and took them about 15 years to come up with their own wallet. It's just that banks or financial institution, or it's not just the financial space, in any organization, to name any industry, textiles, manufacturing, when they become too comfortable, sometimes this is a natural phenomena that some innovator will come and jolt them up. I think this is something that was missing in Pakistan, and I'm very happy that in the last 3-4 years, now fintechs are coming up, even not just fintechs in the financial space, but across other industries, these new players are coming up with more and more ideas. And the good part about Pakistan is that we can always catch up. We know what is happening in the West. We know what's happening in the US. We can always replicate it and do it better in Pakistan. So I feel that once we get into a comfort zone, I think that's a natural phenomenon. Somebody has to come, wake them up, build those use cases for them, and things will go forward. And it's just not a Pakistan problem. This is everywhere. So no big deal.
I think everyone is trying to crack that code, especially in the developing and emerging markets.
But I'm very happy to see how UBL is taking this. I talk to a lot of banks these days. Most of the banks I've met, they're very progressive. They want to make a difference. They realize the market sentiments. That's very encouraging. 3 years ago, that was not the case. Even in Pakistan, I've seen it in Middle East, that wasn't the case. A lot has changed in 3 years, and I'm very happy that the banks in Pakistan are, aggressively pursuing it.
Talking of changes, SECP just recently introduced new regulations for the NBFC. So since you fall in the NBFC segment, obviously there's something more around, the customer complaints and all these other issues, and then only allowing one master app and all the secondary apps to be, to be seized within 90 days and so on and so forth. So how do you find the new regulations? How are you coping with them? Do you have any feedback on that?
Interesting. I don't know. Can I speak my mind?
Absolutely. No one's going to stop you.
Yeah. Okay. So मैं सिर्फ एक एनालॉजी दे देता हूँ without saying a lot. जब आप क्रिकेट खेलते हैं तो जब बॉलर जो होता है वो वाइड करा देता है ऑन दी ऑफ साइड, तो जब कप्तान उसे डांटता है तो नेक्स्ट जो होता है वो बॉलर जो जब अगली गेंद कराता है वो उसको ओवर कॉम्पनसेट करने की कोशिश करता है और लेग पे करा देता है, फिर चौका खा लेता है. सो वो अपनी गलती तो दूर कर दी उसने वहाँ से, लेकिन एक दूसरी गलती कर ली. सो आई फील कुछ चीज़ें मिलती जुलती हैं हमारे साथ इस वक्त पाकिस्तान में ऐसा हो रहा है. But I feel that we have very good relationship with SECP, and they have played a very, very important part in terms of bringing the ecosystem to where it is right now. Without SECP support, things would have been very, very different. And I think they're doing a phenomenal job. It's a learning process for everybody. It's a learning process for us. It's a learning process for these regulators, especially those who are involved in the innovation space. It's a learning phase for the country as a whole. So from that point of view, it's great. I think the regulations are a step in the right directions. Obviously, there were some things that we're not too, happy about. For example, we don't want the regulator to be meddling in our operations. For example, we don't want to be told that how to run our business. Jazz ke paas 25 apps hai. Every bank has more than one app. So it's not that, I understand where they're coming from. There could have been better ways of implementing it, but I understand this is how to safeguard the consumers, and we appreciate the intention. It's just that sometimes it's a little overbearing on the business model. Why do we want to? Are they forcing us to become a super app? We don't want to become a super app, right?
Like in the banking segment, you have the Pakistan Bankers Association, which deals with the regulator taking into account all the feedback and from all the banks. On the NBFC front, do you have some sort of an association, something similar, which can talk to the SECP or?
So just remember, these are very nascent organizations. 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Compared to banks, these are like kids, babies, right? So we're not very mature when it comes to, having a united front when it comes to the regulator. To be honest, the regulator never had that kind of a approach that would motivate us to have that kind of unified approach, because they have been superb. They've been very, friendly towards innovation and new companies. So we never felt the need to do this. Now I think I've seen people, coordinating better, these unions, kind of a union coming up, and these are forums coming up to present a unified front for the SCCP. I think which is a great step. This is, as I said, part of the evolution.
Yeah.
So,
it's more in the collaborative perspective how can you,
not a pressure group, but just the collaboration, just to understand,
exactly.
Because we need to understand that, these are diversified institutions, small diversified businesses. Most of these are like 3 years old, 4 years old. They're babies in terms of, if you compare it to banks. So they're also on their own evolutionary path. I think that, the way SCCP has approached it, I think it's been great. We love coordinating with SCCP. I think we collaborate on multiple fronts to take this ecosystem forward and enhance it and enrich it. But because of the diversified backgrounds of these small companies, it's difficult to come on a single page every time. But coming back to your question of, SCCP's regulation, I think it's a right step in the right direction. It does safeguard the consumer's interests. I think it's a great step from that point of view. I think the biggest issue that we've missed out yet is basically the loan sharks who are out of the system. अभी जिस तरह जो taxpayers net में हैं उन्हीं के ऊपर tax लगाए जा रहे हैं ना, it's something similar to a extent. The biggest problem I feel the consumers, the problem or the danger the consumer has is basically being loan sharked by these organizations or firms who are out of the system, who are operating out of the system, out of the radar. That's the biggest concern that we have. We want to be, we're a regulated entity, and we want to safeguard the consumer interest at the same time, protect our own. But I feel that this is an area that we've missed out yet, and we need to do more work on that from a regulator's point of view.
Okay, thank you so much. Moving on, since we are talking about, the larger discussion is on the digital side. Our next panelist, Mr. Saad Niazi. Before I ask the question, Saad, can you, give a brief introduction about yourself and about your company, please?
Thank you, Amir sir. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Saad Niazi. I'm one of the co-founders of Keenu and also the Chief Operating Officer. Keenu happens to be one of the prominent fintechs in the country. In fact, I would rather say, other than Easy Paisa and Jazz Cash, if you put them in that category, Keenu happens to be the first one when the name fintech, the terminology fintech even was not coined back in the day. In terms of payments, we are in the non-bank, our market share is approximately close to 30%. And that way, struggle is still going on. We just started, so let's see where it goes.
Now, your biggest enemy is cash. And cash continues to grow. If I was just looking at last year's transactions as compared to the current transactions, this number of transactions at the ATMs and over-the-counter cash is grown by 90 million transactions. So we see the branches which are, I think on average, I think there's a 5% growth of branches. Similarly, ATMs are obviously growing, along with that as a vehicle for cash dispensing. Recently, we have seen the terminalization, grow up from maybe a few years ago. I think it was around 40,000 or so, and now it's past 100,000. So there's a slow, I think, increase in the terminalization. And even if you look at the plastic, if you look at debit cards, I mean, total plastic is around 40 million, but debit card is, I think, around 30 million. And 90, I think, 83% of debit card transactions are conducted on ATMs for cash. So the POS side or the terminal side or the retail transactions are, obviously they're growing, but at a very slow pace. So how are you addressing that, and where do you think, are the pain points for your growth, or for digital to, come into play and take over?
To start with, there's a dilemma which I would like to highlight actually. A year and a half ago, in fact, we celebrated that we have hit $100 million a month mark in terms of processing. And unfortunately, because of the situation and environment, we are at the same level again, right? So even after 1.5 years of hard work. So the principal issue comes down to, you see, companies like us all around the world, they have to seek investments to expand. It cannot happen simply through your own pockets or through your own business model. That's true to every non-banking entity. Although when we compare banks with non-banking entities, fintechs per se, EMIs, PSOs, or who are out of the regulatory ambit as well, it's a very unfair comparison from both sides. To start with, banks have their own compliances to meet. We say banks are slow moving. I mean, working in a bank along with you, Amir Saab, and a lot of other friends over here, it used to be tough day at work. Every day you turn up and it was a fight out there, and when you leave the bank, you say the fight has changed, but still continues. So banks are doing a fantastic job. We need to realize that the scope of every institution is different. I mean, one way to judge whether a bank is doing good or not is to, simply we have to start the approach of carving out digital entities out of the bank. That is where the real innovation comes in. When the times are desperate, when there's uncertainty of success, that is probably my experience of 10 years says that, we were very hardworking in the bank, but we were very innovative because of desperate times. So that is one, I think there's an approach-related issue as well. In terms of cash, I mean, I can probably give you the best answer from the position that we are sitting in, because we took up a challenge back in the day when discussions used to happen that there were actually 32,000 machines back in the day. And the total volume, I clearly remember, that was processed via cards on POS terminals was 84 billion in rupees. Now we do more than 3 times that amount per year. That's one entity which has about 30% of the market share. So in terms of that abysmal situation, it has improved drastically. But cash, as I would ask you, what is your prediction? What will be the cash in circulation next year? Or rather, next to next year, if we keep on doing everything the same way? I think we all know the answer. You'll simply add up the percentage by which it has been increasing. So there's something clearly wrong that we have not been able to address. I believe in use cases, but that is at a probably third level. That is when you have an environment, that is where you have a captive, or you have a potential market. I believe Pakistan has a lot of potential for digitization, but the potential market still does not exist because we haven't enabled an environment which creates use cases. There are a few that exist, as Mr. Mohammad Yar mentioned and Naeem Saab mentioned. We are tapping those. The growth in a fintech or digitization, if you look around the world, happens at an exponential level. E-commerce growing by 84%, should we pat our backs on that, or it should have grown by 2,000%, right? That is the question we need to first address. So means there's something fundamentally wrong. Those fundamentals we need to understand cannot be fixed by virtue of regulatory interventions only. We are blessed, as Yasser was saying, with very good regulators who are ambitious, who work hard. In fact, at times they're thinking better than the players themselves, and surprising them by this can be done, this has happened. They do a lot of research for us as well at times. So the terminals grew From 40,000, the exact number, to 110,000 because of one small intervention that was very daring by central bank 3 years ago. Else you won't see three players in the market which exists right now. It's a competition for us, but overall, it is better when more players are there. At times, they do the hard work for you and you go on and take advantage and place your terminals over there. So it's always good. Point is, where is the layer of what we call government? Unfortunately, it is actually absent. Last 15 years, you can see individual efforts. I mean, when I say individual, I say companies. Efforts made by companies, Easy Paisa, Jazz Cash, they really brought about a revolution. What has happened? Where is the bottom line? Now the age of valuation is kind of gone. It's pretty hazy. Nobody's sure what value to pursue. The age of sustainable business is now here. And it's not going away probably for the next 2 to 3 years. That is the time where we all realize around the world the government intervention, not the revenue authority or the regulator. Government is the layer above, the fiscal policy, the 10-year plan, the 20-year plan, and the catalyst. You see, anywhere you see around the world, in your neighboring countries, don't go to the West, go to the Middle East, go to your neighbors. It's been very solid, one-point agenda that digitization happens to be as important as wheat, as important as any crop in the country. We haven't come to that level. I'll just give one example. For example, if government issues a statement right now and they pledge on anything that is pious to all of us that, after 3 years, no payment whatsoever will be based on cash or check, it will be through digital means. You will see, you will have to invite 15 more people in the panel and they all will be very happy. Innovation will happen, money will flow in. What about the guarantees for the businesses who are here trying to raise funds? Setting up holdcos outside, keeping money over there. This has become a trend and we've all accepted it. We are not concerned about it. So, our ambition was when we started 10 years ago that we will become the best and one day the biggest. So I can, mashallah, say that we became the best about 3 years ago, but when we reached there, we said it's pretty lonely at the top. And what next? There is no peak to climb because the potential market has not been nourished. I mean, talking about numbers, in Pakistan, we say 220 million people. Now, how many of them, even if we put money in education, will be motivated to do it? Whereas my banking experience and my experience at Keenu clearly says if you give a discount of 70% at barbecue tonight or any other restaurant, people download the app, they learn how to use it, and they fight for each penny. They know calculation. It beats my imagination. How would people do it when they're not educated? Means the motivation.
Incentivization.
Absolutely, but it has to come from the very top,
Right.
which is absolutely missing. Unfortunately, I don't see any engagement of that sort happening right now. It will take time. That's the scary part, unfortunately.
But there has been some movement in the past few years, perhaps, on the MDR. So how what kind of, I mean, is MDR a big issue? Is it something tweaking around makes a big difference, in your opinion?
Sir, I have data to back it up as well, by the way. These are misconceptions, right? Three big misconceptions. Number one, this business is hampered by the tax-related issue. People don't want to get tax net. People avoid tax net till the time they believe that paying tax or staying out of the digital realm, which one is more advantageous? So I've seen a lot of entities getting converted and started accepting digital instruments because they simply couldn't deny it. It was a 24%, losing 24% of the business, right? That's the average. Then comes the part religious element. I think it's more overblown than anything. It's very much overblown. You have answers to all that questions. I'm not going to go into details. Third part, businesses are very happy to pay the MDR. What they say is that why should I pay it when the other person besides me is not paying it? So it's that. All when it is fixed, when you see that three people in a market, they do it, the rest always follow. And we are a prime example. We entered into this market with 4 banks doing it already. People like you have also, worked on those businesses. But we were able to carve out our own space and doing well, mashallah. But what I think needs to be done over here, other than the policy intervention of central bank around MDR, we need to realize what it actually happened was they made the business sustainable. As soon as State Bank did that, the interest came in, and we see two international very big players coming in, showing interest, putting in money. So, I mean, it has to be holistic. It has to be, the revenue authorities have to chip in at the same time with the same motive of digitization. You do that and you will see the results that we have seen in India. With 1 year of discomfort in terms of demonetization, now you see it as having an impact on the discount rate as well. More liquidity available with the banks, the lending has become cheaper, and now this impacts everybody down the spiral.
Right. Thank you. So, since we have in our panel this pretty much all the parts of our ecosystem, so one of the key parts is the solution providers for the banks primarily. Furrukh Ali Baig साहब, आप अपना एक brief introduction करा दें and BPC, and then we'll go on to the question.
Thank you, Nejib sir. Thanks a lot. So my name is Furrukh Ali Baig. I'm the managing director for Pakistan BPC. I've been in the industry from last 15 years, alhamdulillah, and I've been with the company for somewhere around 7 years. So we have been, we have established BPC around 6 years back in Pakistan. And BPC is actually a Swiss-based organization which is actually serving 300 plus international customers in 100 plus countries. We do have a good clientele now in Pakistan, serving one of the major banks in the industry. And I think that's a quick introduction about the company itself altogether.
Okay. So, how do you find, I mean, obviously, over the last, I think, 5-10 years, especially in the banking sector, the legacy systems have now, slowly and gradually, but I think more rapidly in the last 5 years, they are, upgrading and I think moving with the world in terms of, turning around, products and of course, being part of the digital landscape as well. Now, most of the, platforms, or core banking platforms or other solutions are obviously, they're coming from abroad, right? But so how do you manage the in-country, changes in terms of regulations or, things of that nature? Because you can't have a system for each country, right? So how do you manage that part when you are deploying it, let's say in Pakistan?
Okay, so that goes in hand actually from the product side if you talk about BPC. So usually those international products, they are more configurable and they have, they've been deployed in many countries. So what the, what the global standards are and how they are, how they are going to be deployed in any country. Then the second part is not only about a product that is going to a certain region, but actually the R&D teams which are actually working at the back before bringing that product into the market altogether. I would especially like to thank the regulators over here who has a very clear framework in terms of the technology provider. And the second part goes to the industry as well because they have already been compliant with the global standards altogether. So in terms of the solution providers, they are very much flexible in coming to these markets. Number one, if they have the right product, if they have the right configurations, and if they know what the regulations are. And this is why one of the reasons that we have, BPC has established its office in Pakistan, and we have the local people over here who are actually, beefing them up that how the things will work on ground and how the regulation has to be complied when, you have to implement any product altogether over here.
Okay. Thank you.
We can take 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Who has a yes over there? Ladies, if you can.
मेरा नाम आमिर शौकत हुसैन है और मेरा सवाल टूवर्ड्स साद नियाजी है कि we discussed कि regulation is not the problem, regulator is working in the right direction, language is not the barrier, platform is not the barrier, बहुत सारे हमारे पास जो है वो EMIs हैं. एंड द फंडामेंटल प्रॉब्लम जो आपने आइडेंटिफाई किया वो है गवर्नमेंट. ये प्रॉब्लम पहले भी था, आज भी है, फ्यूचर में भी रहेगा. सो व्हाट इज द सॉल्यूशन फॉर इट?
ये पहले भी था, आज भी है, कल भी रहेगा, तो आपको यही लोग दिख रहे होंगे यहाँ पे. کچھ چینج خاص نہیں ہوگا. ہم گرو جو کر رہے ہوں گے, دیکھیں گروتھ ہم ضرور کریں گے. دیر ول بی لاٹ آف نیو کسٹمرز ان دا ریگولیٹری ایمبٹ, بٹ پیس یہی رہے گی. اب پرابلم کیا ہے جو ہمیں اس وقت نہیں سمجھ آتی, بیکاز ہم اس لیول پہ نہیں پہنچے. وداؤٹ پیس اٹ از ایکچولی اے ڈس سروس. وی آر ٹیکنگ 2 steps بیکورڈس بیکاز آف دا پیس. جب آپ کسی فنٹیک کو یا کسی نان بینکنگ اینٹیٹی کو یہ ٹاسک دیتے ہیں کہ وہ نمبل ہے, وہ تیز گرو کرے, تو اس کا امپیکٹ کریٹ ہوتا ہے. وہ امپیکٹ انوائرمنٹ کے بغیر کریٹ نہیں ہو سکتا. بہت سارے لوگوں کے لیے آج بہت بڑا پوٹینشیل ہے. فار اے کمپنی لائک آرز, ہم اس پوٹینشیل ہم اس وقت ایک طرح سے کرو, وی آر دا کرو وچ از لیڈنگ دا اسپیس, رائٹ. ڈونٹ نیڈ ٹو مارکیٹ آر سیلوز ٹو مچ بیکاز وی آل پیپل نو واٹ کینو از. دس از دا پرابلم. میں جن کیٹلسٹ کی بات کر رہا تھا, میں وہ ان شارٹ بتا دیتا ہوں. ڈی مونیٹائزیشن واز ون ان سعودی. ہر کسی کو آج کل بز ورڈ ہے سعودی, بیکاز دا پی آئی ایف از دا بگیسٹ کیٹلسٹ. پی آئی ایف نے بڑے کلیئرلی اعلان کیا ہوا ہے کہ انفراسٹرکچر پروجیکٹس ہو گئے یا ڈیجیٹل پروجیکٹس ہو گئے, اپروکسیمیٹلی $300 billion انہوں نے خرچ کرنے ہیں 8 سال کے اندر. ناؤ دیر ول بی کمپنیز اوور دیر, 100 میں سے 90 فیل ہوں گی, لیکن وہ سب اسٹرائیو کر رہی ہوں گی ایک سرٹن آبجیکٹیو کے لیے. یہاں یہ انوائرمنٹ ٹوٹلی ایبسنٹ ہے. پلس سپورٹ اس وقت پرووائڈ کی جاتی ہے. میں ایگزامپل دے رہا ہوں. اگر فرض کریں باہر سے ایک ڈیلیگیشن آتا ہے انویسٹرس کا, اس سے ملاقات گورنمنٹ کے ساتھ کون کر رہا ہوتا ہے؟ مینوفیکچرنگ سیگمنٹ کر رہا ہوتا ہے, کسی اور قسم کی بینکنگ سیکٹر کر رہا ہوتا ہے. ویئر آر یور ٹیک کمپنیز آؤٹ دیئر؟ پھر اگر ہم بات کرتے ہیں کہ ہم بڑے 20 لوگوں کو ملائیں گے, تو ان 20 لوگوں میں کون ہوتا ہے؟ ہم ایک کسی بڑی آؤٹ سورسنگ کمپنی کو اٹھا کے لے جائیں گے, وہاں میٹنگ کرائیں گے. سو دا پرابلم از کیٹلسٹ کریٹ ہم نے آج تک نہیں کیا. ایک چھوٹا سا کیٹلسٹ ہو سکتا ہے, بے نظیر انکم سپورٹ پروگرام کی کوئی ڈسبرسمنٹ سوائے ڈیجیٹل کے ہو ہی نہیں سکتی. ڈیجیٹل سے مراد ہی اس کی اسپینڈنگ بھی ڈیجیٹل سے ہوگی. مے بی اٹس اے رانگ تھنگ, آئی ایم ناٹ دی ایکسپرٹ, بٹ آئی ایم سیئنگ جب تک یہ نہیں ڈھونڈیں گے تب تک وہ میگنیٹیوڈ بلڈ نہیں ہوگا. دیز گائز آر سپوز ٹو سیل دیئر سسٹمس, اس کو بیچیں گے نا جب میگنیٹیوڈ بڑا ہوگا. یہ بھی اسی وقت کما رہے ہوں گے پے ایز یو گو میں. لینڈنگ بھی اسی وقت ہو رہی ہوگی جب وہ پوٹینشیل ایگزسٹ کر رہا ہوگا. دیٹ از دی ایشو. ریگولیٹر میں اگر آپ میچ کر لیں, ریگولیٹری فریم ورک پاکستان کا بہت سارے ملکوں سے بہتر ہے. ہم آئی بی ایف ٹی سروس ہمارے پاس جو ون لنک کی ہے اور جو اب راست پہ ہم جا رہے ہیں, یہ بہت سارے ملکوں میں ہے ہی نہیں آج تک. آپ پیمنٹ ٹرانسفر کریں 3 دن میں ملتی ہے ترقی یافتہ ملکوں میں. تو لیکن لیٹس ناٹ بی ہارڈ آن آر سیلز اینڈ دا ریگولیٹر. دا رول ہر ایک کو پلے کرنا ہے, چونکہ ہم پاکستان کی بات کر رہے ہیں نا, دنیا کی تو بات نہیں کر رہے اس وقت.
Okay, we have one last question over there.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Wasim Malik. I am from Tasdeeq, the credit bureau, the first state bank licensed credit bureau. And I have a question for Mr. Naeem. You talked about alternative data, right? So it's a very interesting kind of setup that we are actually working on, because we are the repository of conventional credit data collection, right? And currently, as we see it, like there are about 22 to 23 million customers that have already, availed credit, and their credit histories are available. But obviously, the rest of the, let's say, the adult population of 60 to 70% are unbanked, or maybe they don't have access to formal credit. So you mentioned one of the areas which is specifically very interesting, and we are also working on that, like using satellite imagery for agri sector. As well as drone footages and geofencing and other activities. What other alternative data as you see? So I would like to if you can comment on those. Like one is the obviously open banking regulation, deposit data relation. The others are related to obviously the application level data that is being shared with us, or to be shared with a centralized repository, right? And from there it is provided to other institutions. We can take the example of India Stack in India and Pakistan. I think SCP and Karandas are working on that. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, on the alternative data, and where should it reside actually, from where it could be sent and shared with all the players to use, specifically for the new to bank and new to industry customers? Thank you very much.
Sure. I'll give the example of OneLoad, which is sitting right here. What we've done with OneLoad is based on their data. They have 70,000 plus retailers that they work with, where they have the whole transaction history. They're transacting with them. They also have payment rails with them, right? So what we've done is we've partnered with them to be able to then credit score them, right? and then provide financing through their channel, right? So we don't even come in front. Using their insights of their customer, their needs, we jointly develop products. One of them initially is the overnight lending, so that the retailer can do more sales, then term loans, and many more products in the future, right? Every value, and we're finding out that this is the case in nearly every value chain, right? Where, for example, people like Food Panda, right, who got 70,000 bike riders, they also have credit limits. So based on their transactional history, we can easily start providing credit to them, and then later on to even maybe finance their motorbike, etc., right? Once you start getting insights into what that customer's needs are, or dynamics are, or value chain performances, you can easily start financing them based on the data. And then again, if we can converge the data that you guys have, right? Like you said, most of them are unbanked. The people that we're talking to, unbanked or very underbanked, right? They've never taken a loan before. And therefore, we need to be able to use the insights of their value chain wherever they're operating to be able to provide financial services. And there are thousands of use cases like that, right? Starting with even inventory financing. A lot of these B2B e-commerce companies are now wanting to finance inventory and sales within that value chain. Again, based on their transactional history, you can easily provide that kind of the right kind of financing for that market segment. And financing is only inroad. And we work with thin margins. So our model is very different, right? For example, in the case of OneLoad, from the margins that we make, we share most of that with OneLoad, right? They make money. We're more infrastructure oriented. We are basically providing them the credit scoring capability and working with them to enable the lending performance, right? But is their customer, is their relationship, so they should be able to make a significant amount of revenue. So in each of the value chain, the value chains are incentivized to, first of all, increase the value to their customers, right? Number two is to also create a new revenue stream for themselves. So this is a win-win situation. We truly believe that the lending space in Pakistan is going to grow at least 10x over the next few years when embedded finance really rolls out at scale, right? And this is a graduation process. When you take a first loan, we start working with you, right? And start providing you data. And these millions and millions of people will start coming into the credit culture environment, and then we can build histories with them to progress their financing needs through the life cycle.
If I just add 2 sentences to that. So part of this exercise with the Neem and what some of the other loan products that we have is that we try and build behavior profiles of retailers based on time, location, day of the week, day of the month. So a credit bureau would say this retailer is worthy of getting this much credit. Whereas when OneLoad issues loans, we have a different markup rate for a Saturday to Sunday loan versus what we have from a Monday to a Wednesday loan. So the same retailer has different credit worthiness because that retailer's behavior changes based on the day. So it's behavior-based lending, which is very important, and understanding the business of the customer, that's very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Panelists, let's give them a warm hand of applause.